Good afternoon. It's 1:30 on March 18th. We're in the Tom Baker Room of the City County Building in Bismarck, North Dakota. This is the Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board meeting. Before we start, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we can call meeting order, call roll, please.
Mayor Berglund,
Here.
Commissioner Zachmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Here.
Commissioner Schwab,
Here.
Chair Schmitz.
Here. First item is review and possible approval of the minutes from the February 28th meeting. Policy Board members, what are your wishes?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes.
Commissioner Zachmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Item 4 is the PM1 Highway Safety Improvement Program targets. Stephen, are you presenting?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you very much. Give me one moment. All right, so this is Exhibit A in your packet, and just a brief routine overview of this. For PM1, PM stands for Performance Measures. The North Dakota Department of Transportation recently adopted their annual Highway Safety Improvement Program performance targets for 2025. Federal law requires that they do this to monitor the amount and rate of fatalities and injuries on the state road system and use this data to monitor and assist in setting safety targets and pursuing roadway safety overall. So MPOs, we are allowed to either set our own targets or support the state's targets, and we have historically supported the targets that the state sets, which are typically a little bit, they typically set them a little bit more lower than the data shows for the numbers. So the resolution of adoption for this and the state's targets are shown in that exhibit. TAC recommended approval of the resolution as shown. Are there any questions from the board?
Any questions, members? Hearing none, what would be the wishes of the Policy Board?
I would make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call roll.
Mayor Berglund,
Yes.
Commissioner Zachmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwab,
Yes.
Chair Schmitz.
Yes. Next, item 5 is a safety policy study, and I don't know if Luke is on. Okay. So Luke with SRF is going to give us a progress report, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Schmitz and policy board members. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. A quick update. We are continuing with project management tasks. That includes biweekly progress calls with BizMan MPO staff, Kim. We've finalized the draft plan branding options, which I will show you in a moment, on the website and where you can find that information. We've conducted a thorough data collection process and have been reviewing and assembling data for our needs, which includes, but isn't limited to, centerline roadway data, crash data from NDDOT, and a draft literature and policy review memo document. That literature and policy review looks at federal, state, and local or regional safety planning efforts that have already occurred, and essentially will guide our planning process and build from a solid foundation or framework in the region around safety. We are also taking a look at preliminary data review memo that will be presented at the next steering committee meeting. We have a steering committee meeting scheduled for next Wednesday, the 26th, and we'll be going through a few critical items with technical staff. Really quickly, I'm going to share my screen and just show you the project webpage. I'd like to give a big shout out to Stephen at Bismarck-Mandan MPO for facilitating this and putting this together. One moment, please, while I pull this up. And you'll be able to see the plan branding here. But this is a Bismarck-Mandan MPO homepage, and then you have your menu of subpages on the left-hand side, and there is a 2025 safety policy study webpage specifically for this effort. And right now, it includes some thorough study background and objectives of the study, and then a preliminary schedule that goes through the end of the year. But I think most importantly is the 2025 Safety Policy Study subscription link, where people can enter their email. Their name is optional, and also submit comments with a survey form. So we'll be monitoring that as it is blasted out. This will be frequently updated with important updates as far as public engagement or background material, safety analysis, that sort of thing. And so we're moving forward at a good clip here on schedule. We're beginning the safety analysis, which is always the most, at least, interesting to me, and it's interesting to see where, over the past 5 years, where crashes and severe crashes are occurring in the Bismarck region, and that's when things get a little bit more interesting, and we can start to roll up our sleeves and identify safety countermeasures and potential policy recommendations through the plan. So things are moving forward really well. Our sub-consultant is working on public engagement and scheduling focus groups with some key stakeholders in April, and so things are rolling along very well.
Questions, anyone? I have one, and I don't know how to direct it, but that was on the City of Bismarck paid or website. Is this also populated on the other jurisdictions' websites? It would seem like it would be appropriate.
Thanks for the question, Mayor Schmitz and members of the policy board. Actually, it is not on the other jurisdictions' websites. It is on the MPO website. And so because the MPO website is housed within the City of Bismarck domain, it creates a bit of an overlap. But it is specific to the MPO web page.
So my concern would be, and I'm speaking for my brethren and sisters in the room, how would someone in Mandan or Morton County or Burleigh County outside of Bismarck or in Lincoln know to access this if they're accustomed to going to the websites of those jurisdictions? Or can there be a link?
And yes, Mayor Schmitz, members of the policy board, there can certainly be a link provided to the other jurisdictions, and if they would like to, and typically they will, when we have a study that's underway, they will link to that study website somewhere on maybe their planning page, their engineering page, whichever department is kind of heading up or housing that kind of work within it. And so, typically that would just be an outside project website. In this particular case, there was no provision made within the contracting portion of this study for a standalone project website. And so therefore, we thought it best to house that within the MPO webpage. But yes, certainly, the other jurisdictions do have the opportunity to to link that through, like I said, usually they're planning or engineering pages.
Okay. It just seems to me like in those view of transparency and engagement, we need to make sure we engage everyone. So this is the Bismarck-Mandan Metropolitan
Certainly.
Planning. So that's just my thoughts. I don't know if we can do it, but maybe we need to look at
We
how we
can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Like that.
Appreciate that. That's my only question.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Moving on to item 6, the 2025 ITSRA project overview. And go ahead, Kim.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor Schmitz. Members of the board, last month at our February meeting, we were introduced to a very in-depth and detailed overview of the ITSRA update provided by Sherry Jad Hassan, who is stationed at NDSU Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute. He is the individual that will be overseeing and performing the update to our ITSRA. And because we live in a world of acronyms, I'll let you know what ITSRA stands for. That is Intelligent Transportation Systems Regional Architecture. I'm going to take a moment here to just share my screen. Why it's not sharing this? Okay. Sorry about the delay with that. This will just bring us to our cover slide for the regional ITS architecture plan. Again, we had a great overview of this entire project presented last month, and so I'm not going to belabor that fact. But basically, the ITS is our intelligent transportation system amongst our community service providers. And, that can be as basic as our telecommunications, or it can be as advanced as connected vehicle to smart devices kind of communication. So a lot of times we'll relate ITS to the interstate located cameras for weather that is monitored through North Dakota DOT and things of that nature. But it's very expansive. And so pursuant to our meeting last month, we did hold the kickoff meeting with our large stakeholder group. And our large stakeholder group does include over 30 individuals from around the Bismarck-Mandan region in different areas of services. That was held on March 3rd. Oh, this is going to be very awkward. I apologize. Okay, it would be really nice if this would not scroll, but it does. And we did have very good attendance at that particular kickoff meeting. We had individuals representing the 5 service groups, which you see on this slide over on the left-hand side, represented in like the blue area down on the lower left. The 5 service groups are public transportation management, traffic management, emergency management, and maintenance and construction management. And then along with that, the archive data system or data management supports those service groups. Next slide, please. There are several components to the ITS architecture. We want to make sure that our architecture is defining performing functions, that we're taking a look at subsystems that are in place, how those information flows are managed, interface communications, stakeholder responsibilities, any existing agreements that might be in place amongst jurisdictions or different departments, and also planning integration. So we want to make sure that our ITS update is considering components that goals and objectives that come out of our Metropolitan Transportation Plan and things of that nature. All of that combined together helps us to form a good planning framework. Next slide, please. So last week, as I said, we had, first of all, the kickoff meeting with the large stakeholder group, and last week we conducted several small stakeholder group meetings for the traffic management, for our transit system, for construction and maintenance, and also for our emergency services. Those were very good meetings, and we collected a lot of information. However, not all of the individuals that we had invited and hoped to have participate were able to make those particular sessions, and so there will be continued follow-up with them to make sure that we're gathering all that pertinent information to put into this update for this plan. So that's going to be an ongoing effort that will kind of take us through probably the month of April. And then, of course, Sherry Jad will be compiling all of that information to coordinate proposed changes, and he'll be talking to the stakeholders about proposed changes as well. This is a pretty in-depth and detailed effort that will take us through probably about October before we are presenting back to the boards with anything that's really tangible. And then we will be looking for adoption towards the end of the year. So this slide does show you kind of that timeline overall for this project. Any questions? I would be happy to stand for questions at this point. Commissioner Schwab?
You know, as a former railroad guy, I'm looking at this thing. Why isn't like Valley City and Jamestown in North Dakota picked as a stop? I mean, it looks to me like...
That's to the next, I think that's our next agenda item.
Huh?
That's our next agenda item, Commissioner. That's the next agenda item. No problem with the question, but it's the next agenda item.
And I will be happy to address that question through that presentation as well.
Whatever.
Any other questions on the ITS study? Not, we'll move on. Now we'll move on to the railroad discussion, Big Sky. Go ahead, Kim.
Thank you, Chair Schmitz. Yes, on February 27th, Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority hosted its first webinar for its government partner program for 2025. And of course, we are new members of the government partner program. So we were very interested in this webinar, and it was very gratifying in that the first portion of the webinar was dedicated to answering questions that were presented by MPO jurisdictions and then forwarded on to Big Sky. So I really wanted to share kind of that question and answer portion with you. But also I wanted to share the introduction from Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, because with the new federal administration, there have been some questions as to what is the certainty and the stability of the federal funding, especially involving some programs like the Federal Railroad Administration's Long Distance Service Study or the Corridor ID program. And basically, we were reassured that according to Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, he has emphasized that economic opportunities such as increased access to jobs, health care facilities, recreational activities, commercial activity, or any actions or project components that will help alleviate poverty, enhance safety, and primarily benefit families and communities by improving the quality of their lives, raising their standard of living, or enabling them to participate more fully in our economy are U.S. DOT priorities. And these priorities that he has stated seem to be well within alignment of the priorities involved with the Big Sky Rails project in restoration of passenger rail service through our area. Thank you, Stephen. So although there has been a pause in the new federal grant activity, this pause is just to allow for the evaluation of existing programs relative to new administrative policies that have been rolled out. We have been assured that the corridor ID program and also the FRA LDDS study funding is safe and sound at this point. So they also provided us a little update on their corridor ID program project, which is the Big Sky North Coast Corridor. And of course, this is what directly impacts our region through the Bismarck-Mandan, Burley-Morton, City of Lincoln area. They are currently in step one, which is the scoping portion of the plan. They were awarded that $500,000 to complete that initial scoping project. They are very near completion on the scope, and there is no local match involved with that $500,000 amount of money that was awarded, by the way. They do anticipate to have the scoping portion of this plan done in April, or maybe, at latest by the end of May of 2025. And then that would allow them to step into the phase two, which is the service development plan. And then that's going to be kind of the heavy lift on this, which would then be followed by the final design in step three. Here we get to the map that I believe that Commissioner Schwab was referring to with the Big Sky North Coast Corridor. It does show the corridor from Chicago to the east all the way to Seattle on the west coast. And you can see that that does pass through the southern portion of North Dakota. Beginning from Fargo, it does drop down, and it is shown to pass through Bismarck, Dickinson, and then onward to the Montana border. The locations that are shown on here are basically, some of the more major cities right now. These are not necessarily showing station locations on this map, and I just want to clarify that. They're showing some existing stations. They're showing some larger cities that lend recognition to the proposed route. And again, the step one completion, it unlocks funding and advances route development and allows Big Sky Passenger Rail to move into that step two key service development planning phase, where they will be looking at how reconnecting communities and states from the Great Lakes to the Pacific can be done. So the questions from the Bismarck-Mandan MPO were addressed in this order. First of all, they wanted to address our questions on how cities are chosen to have train stations. And perhaps, Commissioner Schwab, this addresses part of your question right here. So we were wondering what, if any, specific criteria might be used to determine where train stations would be located. Is there something having to do with distance to other stations or the population of a location or area? And we went into this pretty in-depth with Big Sky, and they said, first of all, we have to remember that this is going to be an interactive and consultative process, and that's why the Bismarck-Mandan MPO felt that it was important for us to have a voice at the table so that we could be involved in these discussions as they were occurring instead of trying to catch up and make our wishes known after the fact. They cited a key factor being local initiative, commitment, and cooperation with surrounding areas, and extending the corridor of opportunity. So even though we have a rail line that passes directly through our communities, Big Sky Passenger Rail is looking at the restoration of passenger rail as being a benefit to communities outside of that adjacent corridor. And we want to extend the benefits, and reach out to our neighboring communities as well. Also, local contributions to route goals is significant. They cited socioeconomic benefits and ridership relative to population, and corridor ID staff will evaluate this in the next step. So that will be coming in step two. Interaction with intergovernmental Consultation Council, which is a council that has been formed representing states and tribes. There will be a formal public engagement process that's going to be rolled out, and we want to make sure that we are on board and in step with that public engagement process right away to engage our communities and our citizens in this process. And we're doing this all cooperatively because speaking with one voice as a consensus obviously has more power than a lot of singular individual voices. But Big Sky Passenger Rail did remind us that at the end of the day, FRA will have the final approval on where the stations are located. So next slide. They did say that there are some conditions or criteria that might make some sites more likely than others. Trade and service center cities might be more highly considered. Gateways to major destinations, such as national parks and things of that nature. Also, historic rail station locations. Gosh, I think I know of a couple locally here in this region. Locations providing operational services for passenger rail. Communities committed to using passenger rail to develop opportunities for their citizens and for surrounding areas. And then, of course, they will do some special case-by-case assessment if necessary. If communities are less than 50 miles apart in distance. So if the proximity from recommended station locations is less than 50, they will take a look at that as well. It does, just because locations may be closer than 50 miles does not mean that they will not be considered. So we need to keep that in mind. The next set of questions was what resources, such as funding or technical assistance, would be available for cities who are selected to have a station. We're kind of wondering about things like location analysis, land acquisition, construction, and then supporting services for the funding of perhaps transit infrastructure and service, including possibly rapid transit service between cities in multi-city regions, for instance, Bismarck-Mandan, Lincoln. Transit-oriented development and infrastructure relocation and things of that nature. They gave us some resources. They said, first of all, technical and funding development resources include Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority and Corridor ID staff. They are always at our disposal. Should we have any questions, we can certainly provide them to the staff there, and they will help us out with those. Also, the Western Transportation Institute, and also Amtrak and other rail operators, and we can access those through the link that's provided on this slide at www.greatamericanstations.com. They also suggested to continue to tune into webinars that are offered and other conferences, and BSPRA will be hosting their annual meeting this fall, September 8th through the 10th in Livingston, Montana. We don't have details on that yet. I don't know if there's going to be a remote option for attendance, but I will certainly keep everyone informed as I learn more information. And next, questions from the MPO included how cities, counties, or MPOs can influence higher levels of government, such as state and federal, to support or continue to support projects such as this. The ideas that they gave us were to help recruit additional government partners. Again, there's strength in numbers. Contact state officials about funding $200,000 per state for corridor ID matching contribution. We have not touched on this, but this is part of those tiered phases. So phase one of the corridor ID program provided $500,000 to BSPRA with no local match. The second phase will have a local match that is attached to the federal funding that's provided. And phase three will have an incrementally higher local match. So it is tiered. There is local match that will be required to facilitate this project and see it through to completion. Now, you have to remember that there's 7 states involved with this project because we're going from Illinois into Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, and Washington. And so they're looking at the approximate local match split amongst those 7 states at about 200,000 per, so about 1.4 overall. But if we can start generating interest and contacting our state delegation and maybe our legislative members to gather the support for this, it might not be such a heavy lift if we start early. Also, one of the recommendations was to identify and gather prominent citizens to serve on the Big Sky Rail Foundation board for private fundraising. Now, when we became members of the government partner program, I want to emphasize that we said there's no strings attached to this. There's no further financial commitment from us for participating in this program, and there are no requirements. And so this is completely at will. Nobody, these are suggestions that have been given to us in response to our question in how to gather more support for the project. And they are reasonable suggestions, but not mandatory at all. Also, it was suggested that we talk to senators and congressmen about supporting the development of passenger service on the Big Sky North Coast Corridor. Also, on our end, we need to stay engaged, and that's probably the biggest thing. I will let you know that through this webinar, it was indicated that the elimination of at-grade railroad crossings greatly increases the efficiency of not only freight service, but passenger rail service as well, which stands to reason. If you have no at-grade crossings, you don't ever, that train has total right-of-way and never has to stop going through the communities except for at stations. We're very likely not going to eliminate all of our at-grade railroad crossings. However, as part of the safety policy study, we will be looking at our at-grade railroad crossings, and we will be trying to identify safety countermeasures relative to those at-grade crossings and incorporate them into part of our plan. And that was one thing that was stressed through the webinar, is that it's very important to recognize passenger rail service in the region through our plans. So it doesn't appear to be an afterthought. It's something that we're actively engaged in. And I guess that brings me to the end of the GPP webinar presentation. Any questions now regarding what I've brought forward?
This might sound kind of crazy, but it takes, I believe, our mail here goes to Fargo, gets sorted, and comes back when they have time. And the timeline for mail, if you have a check coming out of Gate C to get over to the post office boxes, is 11 days. And I'm just kind of wondering, do you think you guys have put mail cars on that train? Help them out?
They're talking about parcel delivery service.
Well,
I don't know why mail wouldn't fall into something like that, but
I guess it wasn't that strange after all, because, when I was on the railroad, we delivered mail. And obviously the post office, 11 days, I could walk across the street and deliver it faster than what they're doing. But then you'd have to stop and throw it out.
yeah, it is a thought. It's something that they are considering through that plan development, that phase 2. So as part of the service plan, it is, one of the alternatives.
Okay.
Anything else?
Any other questions? Thank you, Kim. Number 8 on our agenda, North Dakota MPO Directors Meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Schmitz. I will turn your attention to Exhibit E in the packet on page 27. The North Dakota executive directors and their staff from the 4 state MPOs recently had an opportunity to meet with several representatives of North Dakota Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and also the Federal Transit Administration. We call this the MPO Directors Meeting, and this was the spring meeting. This was on February 28th, and there were just a couple of things that I wanted to share with this board, which I feel is pretty impactful. This forum gives us a good opportunity to take a look at the policies that we have been observing, the processes that we have been using, and what new items might be kind of rolled out either through federal administration, Code of Federal Regulations and things like that, or just through necessary changes within our directorship. So I will direct your attention to the slides being shared on screen. Probably the most significant item that we did discuss was that of our Unified Planning Work Program, what we've been doing in the past as far as its development timeline, and then also the timeline involved with the contracting for the UPWP with North Dakota Department of Transportation. We have on occasion found ourselves involved in what is familiar to a lot of folks in that year-end crunch in trying to get things approved. And so with a lot of coordinated effort with the MPO executive directors and also our MPO coordinator at DOT, Will has been just great working through timelines with us and all the details of our UPWP development and then turning that into a contract with DOT. And what you see on page 28 or the slide on the screen is kind of that development timeline. And right now, where we're at is in that January to April timeframe. So right away in January, the MPOs have to start thinking about what kinds of studies are going to be beneficial to incorporate into their budgets and their work programs for their jurisdictions in the coming budgeting year. So we've been doing that, and then by mid-April, North Dakota DOT will provide us with a budget amount, basically, that is based off of the Consolidated Planning Grant Availability Funds, and we will be able to use that to formulate our budget for the coming year. So there was a lot of discussion about this particular time frame because we're kind of in a new system where our contract with North Dakota DOT runs on not only an annual basis, but it is tied to one single consolidated planning grant year. So that means beginning January 1, our budget and work program is contracted to that consolidated planning grant only for that year, and everything ends on December 31st. So if there's any unspent funds within that consolidated planning grant, they just kind of go away. We don't get to roll those over into the next year for our use. They have to be de-obligated by North Dakota DOT. They have to be basically kind of reassigned to how the MPOs are going to use them, and then they have to be re-obligated in the fall so that they can be used for the following year's budget. That's where we find ourselves right here today. In 2024, the newest MPO up in Minot, CD MPO, Grand Forks MPO, and Fargo Metro Cobb, along with Bismarck-Mandan MPO, were advised of approximately $385,000 in funding that had gone unspent. And in fact, we'll find that graph on page 33, maybe? There we go. And at the time of our directors' meeting in February, this was an accurate amount of CPG funding that was remaining. However, since then, Fargo MetroCog has submitted their final billing and request for reimbursement for 2024, which has eliminated their portion. So if you look at the high bars in the middle, those are Fargo MetroCogs, and it was showing that they still had $93,000 in funding that had been unspent. With their last request for reimbursement, that's now been eaten up. So the amount of 385,000 was reduced to about 291,000 to use. Now, the DOT has presented the MPOs with the unique opportunity, and we're grateful for it, that we as executive directors know our MPOs and we know our study needs. We also know our local match capabilities. And so DOT has presented us the opportunity to confer amongst ourselves and come up with a way to redistribute those unused funds. We have done that as state MPOs, and we have provided our recommendation to North Dakota DOT. Now DOT has until April 15th to use the numbers and our distribution recommendation to bring us back our budget numbers for 2026 budget development. I will tell you that of the 4 MPOs, Central Dakota MPO up in Minot, because they are fairly new and they don't have a lot of staff, expressed that they didn't have the capacity to take on a lot more funding and be able to use that substantial amount of funding for studies and things of that nature. And so they basically withdrew or abstained from taking any of that funding to roll into 26. So that left that funding to be split by Fargo, Grand Forks, and Bismarck, and we will be splitting that based solely on population of our MPO areas. So DOT has got that recommendation from us, and they are considering that and working those numbers out for us. I'm going to pause here and ask if there's any questions on this particular process, because it's new and it's impactful to us. All right.
Kim, this is Will. I don't want to interrupt, but you might want to detail the portion on what happens if you guys can't make a decision, because I think that should be known as well, just in case there's any confusion in the future. Yep.
All right. Thanks, Will. I did
Yeah, I'm
have
sure you're
that.
getting to it. Yep.
I had that in the slides. So yes, I didn't touch on this, but in the event the 4 MPO directors would be unable to come to a consensus on how to redistribute the unused CPG funds, North Dakota DOT has the option to determine how those funds will be redistributed. It will be at their discretion, and they can use any of the 4 methods that are shown on the slide on the screen, or any combination of those methods. So they could choose to distribute the turnback CPG to the MPO that released the funds. They might distribute the turnback funds equally amongst the MPOs. They could incorporate it into the CPG formula and distribute the available funding to all the MPOs, or any other distribution that is at the sole discretion of the North Dakota DOT director. I feel that it is by far the most beneficial to have the MPOs be able to come to a consensus and provide a recommendation rather than turn it over to the North Dakota DOT to determine how our unspent funds are redistributed. And I believe that I can speak for the other MPOs because we were able to reach a consensus easily and quickly that they do feel the same as well.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Is there a push, or out of curiosity now, to spend these funds, or can't they go back? Why? It seems to me like it's kind of, we got to spend them rather than, and then that brings up waste.
Thank you for your question, Mayor Schmitz and Commissioners. So the Consolidated Planning Grant is our operational funding. It funds virtually everything that this MPO does, the way that we're structured. We can anticipate building our work program and building our budget only off of the CPG funds that are made available to us. In years past, when funding was more plentiful, there was the instance where there was a surplus of CPG funding and it built up. And that was before our contract was tied to a specific one-year grant. So what was happening within our state was that each of the 3 MPOs had a different year's consolidated planning grant open, and they were all pulling from their own different years' worth of grant money. And in the face of MPO here in Bismarck, we weren't spending our money as quickly as some of our counterparts in the state. And we were actually accumulating a surplus of funds that were not being spent. And there was an instance where they were actually turned back to another MPO, not to us, because we effectively lost them due to the inability of being able to spend them down. Again, we at the time didn't have the capacity to turn out the work products that would have spent those funds and benefited our jurisdictions. So we don't spend the money frivolously. We want to make sure that it's to the benefit of our member jurisdictions. But again, the money isn't as plentiful as it used to be, and so our budgets are now tight. Did I answer your question?
Kind of. You can move on.
We'll move on to item 9, bicycle-friendly community workshop. Kim?
All right, thank you. We have talked about the bicycle-friendly community workshop being held in Bismarck in May. This is an opportunity that has been presented to the Bismarck-Mandan MPO by the League of American Bicyclists. We have scheduled this workshop for May 21 and May 22. May 21st is a Wednesday, and we will start at 9 a.m. at the Bismarck Public Works building down on 601 South 26th Street in Bismarck. We'll have about 3 hours of kind of classroom-based instruction. We'll be focusing on the five E's, which we are scored against for our bicycle-friendly community status. Those 5 E's are education, encouragement, engineering, enforcement, and evaluation. So we'll be going over that. We'll be having a lunch that is provided to us by the League. And then we will be moving to a new location for that afternoon and conducting a bike audit. That location is yet to be determined, as are the details. The next morning, we will reconvene at the Public Works Building in Bismarck at 9 a.m., and we'll have about 3 hours to discuss observations from the bike audit, to discuss ways of moving forward and implementing improvements. And so we feel that this is a very exciting and it's a great opportunity for us to learn not only how to be a bicycle-friendly community, but why it's important to be a bicycle-friendly community, what that can bring to us as a community in benefits. And so we would like to open this up to our administrative offices within our jurisdictions, our administrative personnel, our commissions, our council people, our elected officials, our county folks. So whoever is interested, I would encourage you to maybe use the QR code here that you see on the, don't see on the flyer. There we go. Or hop onto the MPO website where we do have some information on that. You can click on a link and it will take you right to our registration form. And yeah, we would love to have all of you, but I do need to say that we have been We've been held to a limit of 50 attendees, so get your place reserved, and we've had a lot of interest in it already. The registration is live, so any questions on that? Okay,
Doesn't look like it.
thank you for your time.
Item 10, 2025 to 2028 TIP administration modifications. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Just really briefly, we processed 4 administrative modifications to our 25 through 28 Transportation Improvement Program. This is just the movement of 4 microsurfacing projects in Bismarck from fiscal year 2025 to 2026. Projects are for work on Bismarck's 9th Street, a couple of locations on Expressway, and on North Dakota 1804. Just a routine project movement across funding years. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there any other business? Kim.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I will let you know, I'll just give you a little update on our transportation planner position. Applications for the position closed on March 2nd. We received 30 applications, so we are very pleased with the response, and we are going through a refining process right now so that we can get those numbers down to a manageable amount for interviews. And hopefully by this time next month, when I come back to you, I can give you further information, perhaps on having the position filled or close to. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other business? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.